In energy news this Monday, oil prices climbed today as Ukrainian drones hit Russian oil refineries, raising doubts as to moves being made to bring an end to the brutal three-year-old war. In the meantime, the clock is ticking towards September when OPEC Plus will fully complete its 2.17 million barrels of oil unwinding into the global market. And there is more to talk about in this world of oil this Monday. Welcome my guest from the United Arab Emirates, Amena Bakr, the head of Middle East Energy and OPEC at Kepler. It's great having you again on the RS Exchange, madam, and thanks for joining us at this time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Let's start with the war in Ukraine. Now, what are the sentiments around the elusive peace deal being arranged with Russia by President Donald Trump of the United States? What's the market thinking about this?
Well, I think the market is approaching it with a lot of caution. There isn't really a lot of optimism on finding a deal that would be, I mean, no one thinks that this is going to be something imminent, despite all the rhetoric around it and Trump's hopes. And I'm sure you just saw Trump's tweets right now saying that there might be a meeting between Zelensky and Putin. And he even said that Putin doesn't want to meet with Zelensky because he doesn't like him. So huge understatement there. So I think in terms of what the market expects or just general sentiment, everyone is kind of very, very cautious around the subject. And we're not really expecting any concrete results, let's say, or like an immediate peace deal. So
what's the playbook for the oil market then? I mean, on the Russia-Ukraine war. So is it, well, it doesn't look like it's a mix of optimism, it's a pessimism or realism that the war is not likely to end anytime soon, because the two main actors don't seem to be much interested in seeing each other, at least from President Putin's body language and comments coming out of Moscow.
Yeah, I think what you said is more about realism. The reality of the situation is that, I mean, the issues haven't been resolved. They haven't ironed out the differences between them, despite all of President Trump's efforts here. In terms of how this impacts the oil markets, I mean, you mentioned earlier that we saw the price rise because of the Ukrainian attacks on some of the Russian facilities today. And just looking at their Kepler data, we're already seeing month on month a drop in Russian exports of around 200,000 barrels per day. We're expecting, I mean, Russia to recover from this level. In fact, I mean, our assumptions is that Russia will not want to cut its production, even if it sells its oil at a discount, because any of the money that kind of Russia gathers from exports, that helps its economy at this time. So for our Russian expectations around production, we expect them to remain more or less resilient during this time, even if they have to sell at a discount, and even if we're seeing now some partial drop in exports.
Okay, so well said. But when you look at the impact of this barrage of Ukraine's drones on Russian refineries, some of them, on sentiments as to what oil prices should be, are there concerns on the supply side as well, Amena?
I think the market is kind of well supplied. You mentioned that, I mean, OPEC Plus is unwinding its cuts, and it's going to continue doing so. Their next meeting is planned for the 7th of September. So yes, any kind of headline suggesting that we might have a supply outage will, result in some increase in the prices, and that's like a lot of uncertainty around this topic, and that's why I think OPEC as well is being very, very cautious. And in their statements, they're very clear on terms of setting policy. They've said, listen, we could pause, we can go back to cuts, or we can continue unwinding, because remember, they still have a voluntary cut of 1.66 million barrels per day that's slated to end by the end of 2026. They can opt to start unwinding that if they see that the market could take it. But I mean, for September 7th, I would say the group in general is going to probably take the cautious approach and maybe just pause and see how this market reacts.
Okay, so you're just touching on my next question as to that 2.17 million barrels of oil next month. Are there concerns regarding these, or has the market already priced in the expected around 547,000, I guess, of barrels of oil that OPEC Plus, or the big eight, or what I call the group of eight, wants to bring back to the market? That's going to be September. Do you think the market will be flush?
No, I think, I mean, the market is already factoring this in. The announcement has been made, and the market's been factoring in this decision for some time because it was expected. So I don't see any kind of concern with that volume having an impact on the price, since the news is already out there. Now, the big decision that everyone is watching is, what is OPEC going to do next? Because, I mean, the fourth quarter this year appears to be quite a challenging quarter. We might have a little bit of an oversupply situation. Is the group going to wait and see what happens, or act preemptively, or just pause for now and see how, you know, the market reacts? I mean, we're trading October barrels here. Remember, I mean, we're talking about the futures markets, and prices are at a good level. We're at 67, 80 Brent. So that's still, I mean, yes, there's a bit of geopolitical risk baked into that price, but we are still at a good level. So I would say, at least the base case for Kepler, we're expecting that the group just pauses, goes ahead with this unplanned unwinding of the remaining 540,000 barrels, and just waits and sees how things, you know, progress in the market.
Okay, so let's bring in the Middle East crisis, at least between Israel and Hamas on one hand, and Lebanon. The news is that, look, Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying perhaps if Hezbollah will disarm, well, that could be some good news. Then they could pull out of Lebanon and what have you. Do you think this is a little bit of something the market is keeping one permanent eye on, even though we haven't seen oil prices jumping rapidly up on that crisis has been on since just about 2 years ago or so?
Good question. I was just in Lebanon, actually, and this is kind of a topic that everyone was discussing there. The government, as you mentioned, they voted for the disarming of Hezbollah, but at the same time, I mean, almost on a daily basis, Israel is not abiding by the ceasefire agreement and continues to bombard the south. So, I mean, the army's capabilities in Lebanon, as everyone knows, is kind of limited, and Hezbollah have been kind of the force fighting that. So, I mean, that's an issue that's divided a lot of people in Lebanon. Some people think that, yes, that this arming would lead to peace and so on. Others are saying, no, we need Hezbollah to continue having the arms. So I see a very, I mean, divided opinion just being in Lebanon and hearing different views from different people. The population is divided over the subject. But when it comes to energy markets, this topic, and as well, I mean, what's happening in Gaza hasn't been impacting oil prices or energy markets that much, because it's not really leading to any supply disruptions. Yes, it's geopolitical risk in the Middle East, but it hasn't spilt over to impact any supply. Therefore, I mean, I think the market is largely ignoring this risk.
So this is where we are right now. Let me just give you this direct question. Amena, do you think the world is in a bottoming phase for oil prices? Is the $60 handle the new normal?
It's kind of hard to tell now, because I see it playing both ways. We can reach a situation. I mean, if you look at the unwinding of the OPEC plus cuts, we're reaching a situation, Busan, where we're getting a lot of the countries involved almost reaching their maximum. And that includes Russia. I mean, one of the reasons, 2 OPEC plus meetings ago when the eight met, Russia even proposed a pause because they are, I mean, they don't see the kind of value, or they've reached their almost their maximum at providing supply. So I think for many countries, when you reach that max point, and if we do get some kind of supply disruption happen, the conversation about spare capacity is going to come alive again, and you're going to see oil prices jump. So is 60 the kind of level we're stuck at now? Maybe, but also we have to play in that scenario where we don't have enough spare capacity if we're faced with a disruption. Saying that, I can also tell you that there is a lot of supply in the market, and that's why Q4 is a little bit challenging. You're getting supply from outside the OPEC Plus group, from Guyana, from Brazil, from elsewhere, and that's why a lot of banks and other, analytical groups are expecting that prices are kind of going to get softer towards the end of the year and maybe the beginning of 2026. But I think, just the OPEC group or the eight are kind of prepared for the scenario, and that's why they laid out a strategy that they're flexible to change their policy if required.
Okay, so where does that leave the oil companies? What price are they comfortable with? Will they stay in business? Looking at the cost of production, a lot of things like that.
Depends. Which oil companies are you talking about? Are you talking about national oil companies, international oil companies? What region?
The IOCs.
The IOCs.
Yes.
Depends which region they're operating in. If they're in the US, for example, we're seeing, production kind of be more or less stable there with maybe a decline in 2026. They do need a higher oil price, WTI, to be around 70. We're seeing formations like in the Permian mature, a lot of also capital discipline and so on. In this kind of uncertain environment, companies look for profit rather than growth. So it depends on the region. If you're talking about the Middle East region here, it's one of the lowest cost production per barrel is in the Gulf region, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE. So the lifting costs here are much lower. So yeah, I would say in the US it's higher. If you move towards the Middle East, it's lower.
Okay, so let's bring the United States into this conversation. We've talked about the war in the Ukraine. We talked about the Middle East. Let's talk about United States, the shale oil industry. The price of oil that President Trump is comfortable with as far as the industry is concerned. Give me your take on the rising costs of shale and the slowing production in that corner of the oil market, and President Trump's want to play as far as oil price is concerned, because he believes lower oil prices is good news.
Sure. In the beginning of the year, President Trump clearly said that he wants the oil price to be $50. And since then, oil prices, let's say, are around the kind of 68. I'm talking about Brent here, almost $70. And he came out again and tweeted and said, I'm comfortable with this level. So to me, that means 67, 68 is the new 50. He's comfortable with that level. Now, the thing is, Trump doesn't care about the oil price. Trump cares about the gasoline price. So regardless of what oil prices are, higher oil prices, of course, are better for the shale industry, and it's something that I'm sure that, he does want the shale industry to grow. But he's more sensitive when you have a higher gasoline price, because that's when it really hits the U.S. Consumer. And that's where I think, he will start calling on OPEC, on Saudi Arabia, and so on, if we do see a higher gasoline price.
Okay, so whatever happens, I'm sure, yes, he's going to be worried about gasoline because, again, Americans do drive around a lot. So a couple of holidays coming down the rest of the year, November and all of that. So again, we're looking at the winter season coming through and all of that in the Northern Hemisphere. So what does that mean for the price of oil, not just in the barrel of oil, but also at the pump?
Yeah, you are potentially. I mean, again, it depends on how strong demand is. The summer demand was strong. Seasonally, yes, you might get a small spike and so on. But I mean, with this expectation that we're going to get a little bit of an oversupply situation, we might see the oil prices taper off from current levels, and that's kind of what we're forecasting at Kepler too.
Okay, so let's bring it home to Africa, where I am. Now, the African oil refining industry is booming. Investment in that space is expected around 100 billion US dollars into 2030. Or what's your industry insight into how Africa can unlock that size of investment, considering refining facilities springing up? Everyone in Africa now wants to look like everybody wants to do, from Cameroon to trying to revive that 42,000 barrels per day plant that went on fire back in 2019 or so. So it looks like everybody just wants to build a refinery.
It's a massive investment. I mean, that number you just mentioned there, $100 billion. But I'll tell you this, I mean, Africa is strategically located. You have the continent between Europe, and you have, I mean, African states could cater to the home demand, and there is a rising fuel demand in Africa. So there's a lot of demand for product here. And in terms of the European market, I mean, already we're seeing that there is appetite to kind of diversify and look at other markets and step away from Russian products and so on. So again, Africa is well positioned to do so. And these investments happening are in units that can process different kinds of crude. So again, that adds a lot of flexibility to the products that they can provide in this kind of growing continent and a growing demand. So much potential there. And I think it makes sense that huge number you mentioned there kind of caters and just shows you the size of demand in the continent.
Yes, that's on the refining side. But again, as far as crude oil is concerned, Libya wants to open up a whole lot of oil block, as it were. Nigeria wants to do about 220, according to some estimates and all of that. So do you think the environment is ripe? Do you think the money is there waiting for further inflow into Africa, Nigeria, Angola, the Senegal, the rest of West Africa, even for new frontiers in East Africa, for example, with Kenya looking to get some oil done around T6, T7, around the Turkana area. Uganda is building the East African oil pipeline. South Africa is asking folks to come in there and do offshore. So do you think all of this needs to have a better push for Africa to get the necessary investments, while some body language from President Trump still allow for further investments in hydrocarbon?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is Africa's chance here to kind of push all these investments under an administration, especially under a U.S. administration that's kind of encouraging or is not adverse to the growth of the upstream sector. So Africa has this window of opportunity to kind of push investment. So what can Africa do about it? They could cut red tape. They could reassure investors about the political environment, ensure more stability, offer, opportunities for IOCs and so on. So there is a lot to be done also domestically, but this is a huge, huge opportunity. And I hope that all African states kind of take advantage of it. Earlier this year, I was in Libya attending a conference, and to be honest with you, I found all the IOCs were there. It just shows me like the amount of interest and appetite that they have for developing blocks.
I'm sure you're going to be in Cape Town also in September for the African Energy Week. It will be good to see you again and be part of that conversation, as always, bringing your insight into that. Thank you so much. Look forward to see you then. Thank you so much, Amena Bakr, the head of Middle East Energy and OPEC at Kepler. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.